Hello, and we are back, but in a very, very different way instead of sports because there really is no sports. We're going to talk some movies. So we're relaying movies instead of sports. So I think that'll be more enjoyable. I mean, if you were trying to talk about sports every week, I feel like it would just get boring and there'd be literally nothing to talk about. But movies are really more relevant than ever because what else are you doing in this time other than watching movies and shows?
Yeah, we are the most inconsistent podcast in the world. We've said that, so we're just gonna inconsistently talk about sports and completely switch it up.
Yeah.
So,
So I think
uh,
we can do a lot of these though. We were
yeah,
thinking every other day or something like that, just because I mean I'm watching movies every night anyways, so might as well talk about them in half the time and love talking movies. So pretty much probably see it in the title, but we're going to be talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood today. It's the ninth film of Quentin Tarantino. It's written and directed by him. And I guess if you haven't seen it, or if just a little summary of what it is on Wikipedia, Rick, a washed out actor, and Cliff, his stunt double, struggle to recapture fame and success in 1960s Los Angeles. Meanwhile, living next door to Rick is Sharon Tate and her husband, Roman Polanski. So that doesn't really give it much, but it really revolves a lot about it's more of a period piece and things are happening in that time and the Manson murders and stuff like that. But obviously starring Leo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, and Margot Robbie.
yeah, and pretty much just gonna start off with this film. One thing I love about Tarantino is that rarely do his movies kind of follow the traditional rules of like what film is supposed to be like. Like you see in Pulp Fiction, of course, it's filmed out of order. Reservoir Dogs, like it leaves the audience without like so much context that you're just like, what the hell is going on? But for this movie, I think this is kind of like the movie he's always wanted to make because I've seen in interviews and stuff after this came out and has received so many good reviews that like so many of the scenes like in the cars and stuff where it's very dragged out and it may seem just like very annoying, but a lot of it is just from what he said is just how he remembers growing up in Los Angeles and that time was just sitting in the car with his dad and listening to music all day. So that's just like one thing about it that I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that's what I was
Um,
gonna say. I'm pretty sure a lot of this is kind of like obviously he grew up loving movies and Hollywood is the epicenter of movies. So I feel like this is kind of a creation of his dreams and how he fantasized about Hollywood and the different characters he grew up with because a lot of the people in this movie are based on true people, especially a lot of the Manson murder, people in the Manson family, and Leo and Brad Pitt are based off of true characters back in the day, or just at least inspired by them. But interesting enough, this was announced back in 2017 that Tarantino was going to make the movie. And originally, because every single movie that Tarantino's done has been with the Weinstein brothers, so they were going to be in this one as well.
yeah.
And then obviously, what went down.
Yeah.
So they were kicked out of it, rightly so. But yeah, the writing process for this movie was a little different. He actually started off writing it as a novel. So just kind of getting the story down and what he wanted to do. And some of the dialogue he actually was writing as like a one-man play. So kind of different process, kind of, I guess, mapping out what he wanted to do with this. Because I
Yeah.
don't think he knew for sure that he wanted to make a movie. And then obviously he decided, because I think he's been working on this for several years and I'm sure it's been in his head. I feel like in I wouldn't be surprised if this is his last film because, like you said, like this is the move he always wanted to make. So he made all the movies up into this, and this is like I'm gonna go out with the one where I'm just gonna make it what I like. And obviously, you care what people think about it, but I feel like to a certain extent, he was just happy with if it made him happy.
Well, I'm pretty sure as well, like Tarantino fans like that are way bigger than me might know more than this. I'm pretty sure he actually said the amount of films he wants to make in his career, like when he first started. I'm
I
pretty
thought
sure.
it. I thought it was 10.
And
I thought it was
yeah.
9 or 10. But
So this is definitely, even if he were to cap off his career with this, I would think for sure this is a great way to finish it. You can tell it's very personalized. And I'm sure he enjoyed every minute of making it. Like, and of course, if you're a regular Tarantino fan, this very well may not cater to what you're expecting. Like,
Yeah, so why don't you get into what your opinion and how much you liked or what you
yeah,
thought about the
I
movie?
mean, so like I was saying, like a lot of the scenes they seem dragged out and pointless, but and obviously one way that he gets away with this is because Tarantino attracts so many big names. Like you see Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, and Margot Robbie. Honestly, I didn't think needed to even be in the film. I think in a lot of the cases with these dragged out scenes, you're kind of just admiring these megastars all in the same movie. You're like, holy crap, Brad Pitt and Leo are talking in a movie right now together, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think he gets away with a lot of the stuff. It's kind of lazy at times where like they're just sitting in a room together watching FBI, like a scene they just or like a TV show they just made. But at the same time, I find it kind of amusing and entertaining in a way. I think the comedy in this movie is super underrated. Like a lot of the scenes are really awkwardly played out.
Even the
Um,
final scene has humor in it, although it's extremely gory. It's just so
yeah,
absurd that it's pretty humorous.
yeah, and he really goes out of his way to make a joke pay off, and I mean that by like the whole scene with Bruce Lee and how like there's just one little comment about how he had an altercation with one of the former producers or something because of an altercation with Bruce Lee. So they go on and do this whole 10-minute scene where he's fighting Bruce Lee and whatever just to pay off one little nod, which I thought was pretty
Yeah.
hilarious in its own way.
Yeah, some people had some trouble with the way Bruce Lee was portrayed in it. Like, especially his daughter was actually, that she talked about it, Shannon Lee. She thought it was a mockery of Bruce Lee. And I think the way he portrayed him was like loosely based on stories that Quentin Tarantino had heard about him. So they were making like he was in the Green Hornet, a movie which was like in the movie was the movie they were going on set to make. And apparently there were a lot of complaints because he was just beating the crap out of all the stuntmen. Like he was just injuring everybody. Like everybody, like I don't. It's a bit weird. I don't know how that would happen, but like apparently he was kicking stuntmen and injuring them, whatever. And so a lot of people were complaining, and they brought in this guy named Gene LaBelle, who is kind of like he's a big martial arts guy, and I guess he does a lot of like coordination for movies and stuff like that. So they brought him in, and apparently this guy, Benny Dobbins, told Gene, right when you come on set, put Bruce Lee in a headlock. I don't set the tone. I don't know. So he goes, throws Bruce Lee in a headlock, then he throws him on his back like a fireman. And then so he's running around set with Bruce Lee on his back, and then apparently Bruce Lee was yelling that if he didn't put him down, he was gonna kill him. But then he put him down, and apparently he realized that Bruce Lee wasn't very good at grappling. So then they trained for over a year in grappling and then became good friends. So definitely interesting, but I mean,
Well,
I
yeah,
thought it was
and
kind of funny.
yeah, and you're talking about how like a lot of the stuff is loosely based off of historic events, and that's kind of like I think he took a lot of Inglorious Bastards into this movie. Like even the scene where he's literally spraying down Nazis with the flamethrower at the beginning, and of course that hilariously pays off at the end, which is amazing. But I think you need to know the historical context of this film going into it. Like I remember the first time that I saw it, um, when I was leaving out of the theater, there was a lot of people who had no idea why the ending ended the
Mm-hmm.
way it did. And I think that's just because not a lot of people know the story of Sharon Tate. I had to actually look it up beforehand to educate myself before I went into this. Um, and like I think it's a very feel good movie for the people who were around that time and who knew how crazy it was, all the stuff that went down with Manson. And it just kind of it gives you a nice feeling. And of course, like when all that crazy stuff is going down at the end, you're rooting for Brad Pitt and the dog, which is just like an absurd way of it ending, and it's so Tarantino. But
Definitely. I was waiting for that moment. I'm like,
yeah,
I haven't gotten that Tarantino moment yet.
yeah, and that's the other thing too. like one other criticism I have about it is there's not a lot of tense scenes in it, but when there are tense scenes, majority of them don't pay off. Like when you see at the Spawn Ranch when he first
Yeah.
goes and he's talking to the girls, and then they are really reluctant to let him go into the house. Then you see him and Dakota Fanning talking, and it's really tense with the buildup of like she's watching TV. It's just so crazy how he thought about doing this. Like she's watching TV, and the music on the show just happens to be very tense as their discussion gets very. It's very deep.
I thought she was gonna like stab him like every
Yeah.
second. You're like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? But yeah, I think, and which was really interesting about the Spawn Ranch is that like that was fully true. Like I forget the guy's name. I should have looked it up, but I forget the guy's name who was the blind guy who was sleeping in the bed, like the old movie producer or whatever his deal was. But that was totally true. Like the
Yeah.
Manson family moved in, and I guess because they were taking care of him, he let them live on the ranch. But yeah, my biggest complaint about the movie was that I wanted more Manson. I wanted more of the Manson family because when I saw this trailer and I saw Charles Manson, I was like, oh yeah, this is what I need. Because cult, like weird society, that's my stuff. Like weird, like mass murders, just crazy stuff like that. I love it. But I felt like you didn't see how like ruthless and like creepy these people were until the very end when they're in the car, like saying they wanted to kill Ricky Dalton, like Leo's character. Like throughout the whole movie, they're almost like you almost kind of like them. Like the what was her name? Like Pussycat, the girl that Brad Pitt picks up in the car. Like she's kind of a fun character. Like you get along with them almost, even though you know they're dark. I just wanted them to get into the nitty gritty. I wanted it to get a little more
Yeah,
dirty.
I guess that was just Tarantino's decision of whether or not to kind of give Manson more of a
Mhm.
platform, I guess, or something. I don't know, but I
And
agree with you. They definitely could have used their group in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I think that the movie did such a good job of straying you away from the fact that that was even going on, so that at the end it just paid off that much more.
but the thing is, like, there was moments where like Margot Robbie's in the movie theater or she's like dancing,
Well, that's what I'm saying.
and
She
it's
didn't even
like,
need to be
what
in
are
the film.
we like? It was just dragging on so much, and like, yeah, just scenes like that where I feel like this movie could have been chopped by at least 45 minutes and like just got right to the straight of the points. And like, I think showing the production design, because obviously it won for it and it was amazing, and the cinematography and that kind of stuff and about the movie. But I just felt like there were so many times where it's like there wasn't enough of like it being 3 hours. I need like a direct plot where I'm looking forward to that happening. And I already know that the Manson family is going to come in and kill Sharon Tate, obviously, at the end. But so there wasn't anything for me to be like, oh, what's going to happen next, really. It was a period piece. So it's kind of what's happening in that time. So I feel like it could have spiced it up a little more if you saw that, like maybe a little more of the meetings and the mindset behind the Manson family. Because you hear stories, one of the characters in it, I think her name was, yeah, like Snake. That was her nickname. Her real name was Diane Lake, and she wrote like member of the family, which was because she left the family and then wrote a book about like Charles Manson and being a part of the cult. And she talks about Tex. Like Tex in the movie was a real guy. His name was Charlie Watson, and she talks about how their Spawn's ranch was getting raided. So her and Tex was hiding out on a ranch somewhere farther away. And he saw a headline about Shannon Tate's murder, and he was like, "I killed her. Charlie asked me to do it. It was so fun." Like just sick-minded people, and they almost seemed normal to a certain extent, even though you knew they weren't.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I obviously, like I said, if you're a Tarantino fan, there's definitely a case to be made for why you don't like this film. But I think at the same time, if you are a Tarantino fan, there's a great case to be made why this is probably one of the best films he's ever made. So I think it's just all in the mindset you have going into it. And of course, there's a like when you look at the first trailers, you see a whole bunch of action and stuff, and you expect it to be very fast paced, like a lot of other of his films, and it's not like that. But I don't think that should take away from anything of it.
Yeah, I think the trailer threw me off a little bit, but because they showed Charles Manson, and he was only there once in the movie, which is surprising. I was surprised they didn't utilize him a little more. But yeah, because like I watched this movie twice. So the first time, and I think it definitely probably needs a couple rewatches, because the first time I was like, because we saw it in theaters together, right? And we were like, okay, like that was good. And then I rewatched it again, and the thing is, so I watched it with my parents again, and I feel like I hadn't seen it in a while, so I didn't remember how much I liked it. And when you watch it with other people, and you're the one that like recommended the movie, you're kind of invested in them liking it as well. You know what I mean? So if they're
Yeah.
not liking it, you're not liking it. And like both my parents like fell asleep like an hour in because after half an hour they're like, "This is so brutally slow," and I'm like, "Ugh." And then I kind of just set off the mood. And then anytime there was kind of a scene that was dragging out a little bit, I could feel it like, okay, let's move on. So let's pick up some action. So there was definitely some scenes, but like you can definitely appreciate the acting. Like I thought Leo was amazing in it. I thought like the scenes where he's in his trailer and he's just going insane. I loved his range of emotions and how he was so like skeptical about himself. And then Brad Pitt is kind of like the polar opposite, where he's just super cool all the time. He's pretty sure of himself, I would say. He just kind of like goes with the flow when Leo just freaks out
Hmm.
24/7. But yeah, no, I loved Leo's performance in it. I thought he made up for a lot of missing gaps in it for me.
Yeah, and like for me, like you're saying, I saw it the first day it came out, and I remember thinking the same thing. Like, all right, what are we doing here? Let's pick it up. And I've watched it 4 times now, and it seems like when you know the outcome of it, the gaps seem a lot smaller
You can
because
appreciate it.
yeah, and you can kind of not totally piece together, but kind of piece together why these scenes are important. And then, like, definitely seeing it multiple times will enhance your experience of the movie, I think.
And I think watching it by yourself, but I find that's with most movies, unless it's a comedy, watching it by yourself is important just because your perception of it can kind of get, like I said, changed by the people you're watching with, especially if they don't like it. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely think it could have been shorter just because some of the parts with Margot Robbie, it was just like it felt like there were so many scenes where they were trying to prove that she was just like the nicest person and like happy go lucky, which she seemed in the movie. It's just like her, although she was a main focal point in the movie, her character just seemed useless at some points.
I think it was just a name to add on to the casting list. To be
Yeah,
honest,
she,
they
she
could have,
had to be in the movie if you're doing the Manson murders at that time. Like,
um,
but
yeah, and she doesn't even really look like Sharon Tate when you actually look at them together.
yeah,
So that's why I think it was just a name to attach to the film, and it paid off. I think um, it definitely attracted a lot more people to go see it. Whether or not she needed to be in the film is up for debate, but uh, Leo, this is one of my favorite performances of him I've ever seen in terms of getting into a zone that he's never been in, where he's constantly unsure of himself.
definitely.
He's in a lot of other films, he's very confident. He's very, um, yeah, just very confident. And I think in this one, the whole thing, he just had to be vulnerable with it, and I think it paid off for sure.
Yeah, he was totally believable, and you could tell like he was just on edge. He totally thought his career was going downhill, and that's what I said. I think Brad Pitt was a good supporting cast because he was kind of like the calmer version that was bringing him down to level every time, and he was just freaking out totally. And I'm sure I'm sure it's true for a lot of actors that are in that case. I'm sure
Yeah.
a lot of them are like you feel like you're getting typecasted into certain roles, and then you're getting pushed out. You're being the villain, and yeah, I can imagine exactly that being a case.
Yeah, and Brad Pitt, I don't think I've seen him in a funnier role either. Like I didn't think he was capable of making me laugh so hard, but good for him.
Yeah, he was funny, but like he was funny, but it almost seemed like he never smiled. You know what I mean? He was just so like monotone, but it was like his dry humor that worked.
Yeah. I
Like that's
think
why it was funny.
Yeah, I think it was just the role that he was in. And another thing that I saw on Twitter the other day is in every film, the director tries to get a scene where Brad Pitt is eating something.
Mm.
Because for some reason it is the most entertaining thing in the world to some people. And in the first few scenes of the movie, he's eating a celery stick, and then he's eating his dinner at home. So
Hmm.
I don't know. It's just a weird little trend about Brad
Oh
Pitt.
yeah, he always had like the crappiest meals in his little trailer,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. I love the scene where he's tripping off acid. I thought he was so funny.
that's what I'm
He's
saying.
like,
Like,
whoa.
yeah, a lot of
And
the
then
scenes where you didn't expect it to be as funny as it was going to be, I think he did a great job of selling it.
yeah, and we talked about Leo performances, so we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, so if I think we've kind of covered a lot about the movie. Definitely beautifully shot. It won for production design, which just made sense. They really captured Los Angeles. Although I obviously wasn't born in the '60s, they definitely captured the feel.
Yeah, and one thing, because I have the DVD, I don't normally buy DVDs, but when I really like a movie, I'll buy it. Um, he Tarantino had to go and ask every storefront owner if they could use their store to redesign it, to make it fit a look. It is unbelievable. Um, the attention to detail and a lot of the stuff is crazy. There are a couple of flaws, but that's going to be inevitable when it comes to a period piece like this. Like, I saw people picking it apart in a couple of videos and stuff where some of the films, like, you you see Margot Robbie walking past a theater at some point and it has an advertisement for
Yeah.
a film, but the film doesn't fit the timeline of when it came out, which is like
Mm.
it sucks so hard because it's little things that like that just like if you get them right, you appreciate the movie so much more. But with everything else, I can ignore that.
Yeah, and like, yeah, I feel like real people that are super invested in the movie, they'll see one thing like that and just like totally takes them out of it. Like,
Yeah,
they're just like, oh, this isn't real.
yeah,
But yeah, I think my biggest complaint was this is that it was too slow paced in certain scenes where I could never get hooked into the scene because it was just, or hooked into the movie's plot just because it was going too long. But I had so much like respect for how well it was done in terms of production quality and acting. And Tarantino really just, I respect that he just wanted to do his own thing and he created a good story, but you kind of just got to be able to sit down and be ready to take in 3 hours of just things going on in a certain
yeah.
time.
Where like this one relies a lot on character arc rather than action packed like a lot
Definitely.
of his other movies. So, what are you gonna give your rating on this?
I would give it a 7.5. That would be mine. Yeah.
Whoa.
It's because if I gave it above an 8, I would just be lying. Like I wanted to be love it so bad. I really did. But there was never a point in the movie where I was like, this is awesome. There just never was.
All right. I am on the complete other spectrum. I am giving this one a 9.1. Um, I think it's arguably one of Tarantino's best films, top 3 for sure, in my opinion.
I think it's one of his
Um,
worst.
that's 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 on you. The Oscars will say otherwise. You want to get into the next? What are we talking about here?
Yeah,
Leo's.
so yeah, I think this is kind of what we'll do for each of these. Kind of the main actor or one actor that we want to pick out in the movie we're going to talk about. We'll say what we thought their top 5 performances was, not based on the quality of the movie, although usually good acting results in a good movie. But either way, just based on purely like Leo DiCaprio's performance itself. So we'll go 5 back and forth, like you five,
Yeah.
5, 4. Okay, you can start if you want.
So number 5, I got Catch Me If You Can. Um, it's a movie where he's with Tom Hanks and he's I forget what his character's name is, to be honest, but he's like running away. He's changing his identity a whole bunch, and I think um, for a character like that who is like an identity theft and he has to constantly change his roles, and not to mention Leo was super young when he made this movie, and this was one of his first major films. Definitely a great performance, mostly because of his youth, but that's going to be my take on that.
Yeah, that was a good movie. Based on a true story, though. That
Yeah.
guy, that guy is just insane. Like, how do you? I guess
Yeah.
we spoil it. But like, how do you just become a fake being a pilot? Like,
Yeah.
just the guy like just finessed his way through everything.
Yeah.
But for number 5, I'm gonna say Wolf of Wall Street. I think part of the movie just being so good kind of maybe sways my decision a lot, but I loved Leo in it. I think kind of part of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood you see in Wolf of Wall Street, like just a guy that gets in the dumps of his feelings and just at a very low point of their life, but also there's such a range in his acting because at some points he's the top of the world, getting Margot Robbie, becoming a millionaire, and then life just crashes and he's getting infiltrated by the FBI and things just hit the fan. But I love his performance. I think he's really dynamic and he's believable in the character. He's witty, he's smooth. He's pretty believable in it, and I really like it.
Okay. Number 4 for me, I got The Departed. So this one obviously as well, I think is swayed by how good the movie was. But the role that, like, I think his character's name is Billy Costigan.
Something like that.
The way he goes about himself in this movie is just very I don't know, it's very out of character for Leo to play something like this. He's very I don't know. I just like
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I have The Departed at number
Yeah.
4 as well. I just think it's a role we've never seen Leo in, where it's like another character who's just totally believable, and he makes you like, he's believable because he like you see that he's part of. If you haven't seen, I mean, like, we're probably just gonna have to scroll these, so like whatever. But he's infiltrating Jack Nicholson's mob or mafia or whatever you call it, and you can tell like he plays it well because obviously he's infiltrating it. He's believable because he's a tough kid obviously in the movie,
Yeah.
and you don't really see him like a tough guy in any of his movies. Really angry, pretty much beats up anybody he sees in the movie. But yeah, but there's also times where he's like terrified because they're putting him in such a vulnerable position where he's just scared for his life. So you see him act like a tough guy, but then next thing you know, he gets out of a meeting and he's like almost crying on the phone because he almost got like snooped out because he had a wire on. So no, he was just definitely a standout in that movie because he was just very powerful, angry, a lot of emotions, and another character again that's just super believable.
Yeah. So at number 3, I got Django Unchained. So obviously, adjusting to a time period like this in general is hard to get into as an actor, of course. But what I think he does the best in this movie is kind of commit to the villain role that we've never really seen him in. Where he's just like obviously in the time period not like a very good person. Yeah, just a very believable role, I guess. I haven't seen it in a while, but I
love
like
that movie. It's one of my favorites. But no, it's definitely because it's like it's funny, like because he's almost like fake nice. Like when you first see him, he's all like kind of southern like happiness and warmth, and then he's just he's a horrible person.
Yeah.
And I forgot to say, talking about The Departed, another movie I showed to my dad, and halfway through he was like asleep. What are you doing? Like how? But anyways, we talked about a lot. So my number 3 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We talked about his role a lot, so we don't really need to get into that. But yeah, he was very vulnerable in it, and he's just, and also I liked his accent. Like he put on a really good accent, and
yeah, for sure.
And yeah, it didn't seem fake. It seemed like it was actually the way he spoke.
Yeah, well, so Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's my number 2. So we don't really need to get into that, I guess. We've talked about it long enough, but what's your number 2?
I have The Revenant. I mean, probably has to be one of the most grueling movies to ever to ever have to be acting. Like, it's just because you can't fake what he had to go through. They filmed I forget where exactly they filmed, but just the middle of nowhere, middle of winter, going through ice cold water, covered in snow. Like, just nothing about it was comfortable, and there's no way he was comfortable filming that. And I love the movie, of course, but it relies so heavily on him. Like, it's literally just him. I mean, there's Tom Hardy and all those other characters, but for almost all the movie, you're kind of just following Leo. And it's just the whole time you're watching it, you're like, I'm so glad I'm snuggled up in my couch watching this at home, because that just seems like the most horrible life ever. And you can tell it's just like the pain in his eyes, but it's also just such a different way of life where it almost seems like that's just what happened back then in that lifestyle. Like, for us to go through that now, nobody could take it, but people were just tougher back then. And it's just, I just loved his performance in it, and he rightfully got his first win for an Oscar for it. So I loved that movie, and I thought he was awesome in it.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that was his first, now that you look back at it. But my number one, I got to go with Wolf of Wall Street. I know you had yours at number 5. Definitely a little bit of bias in the fact that this is one of my favorite movies, but I think the reasoning behind it is because of how good Leonardo DiCaprio is in it. The way he is able to show every different emotion in this movie, I think, is executed so well. From the highest points in his life to the lowest point, you really see a guy who gets built up and broken down in a matter of a couple hours, right? And it's just, he stoops to such a low that you honestly feel petty for him. And I've never seen, I shouldn't say I don't see that too often or feel that too often for characters in movies. And also, wonderful scene when he's just like super drugged out and crawling down the stairs.
Yeah, on Quaaludes.
That's insane. But yeah, just attention to detail in terms of how the character's emotions would be affected by the circumstances that happen in his life. I think that's why I have that at my number 1.
It is such a shame that movie is not on Netflix.
It's bouncing off on and off of it. I don't know. It's not on right now.
It's not on right now. I mean, I look it up. I sort of like every other week trying to make sure it's on there, but it's not. But yeah, no, Leo's amazing in it. And so my number 1, a movie that probably not many people have seen, and it was his first big role. It's What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Have you seen that?
Yeah. That's definitely a top one for me.
Like, I love the movie, but like, so if you haven't seen it, he plays Johnny Depp's brother, but like, he's a kid that's mentally challenged, and it really revolves around Johnny Depp's relationship with him. And he's so it's the most believable movie or performance I've seen from him, where it's like, it even came to the point where after that, he wasn't getting casted in movies because producers thought he was mentally challenged, which is like weird to say, but it's just like, that's how good he was in it. And it's like, there's times where he's so happy-go-lucky, but then in a second he's bawling his eyes out and running around, and he's so childish. And there's a scene where Johnny Depp, pretty much Johnny Depp leaves him in the bathtub like overnight, and so he's like freezing cold, and now he's petrified of water, so he doesn't bathe for like weeks. And then Johnny Depp gets fed up and like pretty much punches him in the face, and right away, just the way he plays out the character, you can see the pain in his eyes, and like, he just feels so vulnerable in that movie as well, and he just plays it so well, and I loved him so much in it, and he was probably one of the main reasons I like that movie. Such a good movie.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to argue really a top 5 movie.
All these
for
movies
Leonardo.
are amazing. Yeah, I love Leo.
It'll probably be coming up harder for debate as we get on to different actors. And I
feel like he gets, obviously he's not underrated as an actor because everybody knows who Leo is, but I feel like that also is because he's in so many movies. But like, I don't know if people actually appreciate like how good of an actor he is. Like, I really like his acting, and I think not almost all, but like a lot of the movies he's in, he's the reason why they're good.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna get into Another segment that we'll do each episode. So pretty much what we're going to do is each episode will go by year. So this is 2019, and then next episode will be 2018, down the list. So we're going to be doing Oscar repicks for each year. So because Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was 2019, we're going to do the Oscar repicks for 2019. So going through the categories, we're not going to go through every category because nobody wants to hear about some of the stupid categories there are. Anyways, not that they're stupid, but the less important ones. So we'll just start off with the big one. Let's go for Best Picture. Parasite deserved to win. I'm just going to right off the bat for Best Picture. That was the best movie of the year. I love that movie. That's all, just everything about it. I love that I went into it not knowing anything, and it totally surprised me because I had no clue that's what was going to happen. I don't really want to spoil too much just because I want people to watch it because it was so good. And maybe we'll do a review for it down the line or something when we're done all the recaps of the years. But yeah, I definitely think it deserved to win. It was the best movie of the year. The acting was great. I loved that I didn't know the actors really as well because it kind of made it feel a little more believable because sometimes, well, like when you're watching a movie with like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you're looking at Leo and Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie, and they're big stars. So you obviously know they're not in like living that life. But when you don't know who the people are, it feels like it could be real. And yeah, just everything about the movie. I love the twist. Just I was in it the whole time.
Yeah, Parasite deserved it for so many reasons. First of all, obviously breaking the barrier for international films. People are
Yeah,
definitely going to be way more open to going to see international films after this one. In addition to that, the characters were so relatable, and I think that that's always something that's been a big barrier as well in regards to international films, not just the language barrier, but in terms of it's hard to relate to someone when you can't understand what they're saying or how they're feeling, and you just assume that they're not feeling the same way that you are. But these characters were super relatable,
definitely.
um, and of course that has something to do with their social class as well. I think, yeah, definitely film of the year, no doubt. In terms of it's the most unique film on this list, really. Um, yeah, not
It
much
had
more. I don't feel like I need to like preach to the choir
it
here.
had so many different layers. It was like at one point it was a comedy, and even though like subtitles weren't an issue, maybe at the beginning you're like, okay, I'm reading the subtitles. By the end of it, I was speaking the language. Like
Yeah,
I was flowing along with it, but it's just the way it transitioned so smoothly from being a comedy to being like a thriller to being a horror movie. Like this movie has everything, and it
yeah,
takes you on a ride. And the thing I love about it is it never feels like forced. Like the comedy never feels forced. It's perfect, and it transitioning was smooth as well. And like in an instant, like if you watch the movie, you'll know right when it switches, and you're like, "What is going on?" But no, amazing. But because we don't have a repick for Parasite because we definitely thought it deserved to win. I have a couple movies that I thought could have had nominations. The only movie that I didn't see for Best Picture was Little Woman. Other than that, I liked almost all the movies. And I mean, you don't want to put too many movies into the category up for nominations, but I thought like Uncut Gems, I thought that definitely should have been nominated. I liked Ford versus Ferrari, but I don't know if I liked it any more than I liked Uncut Gems. I thought Adam Sandler could have been up for actor in a leading role, but we can talk about that after this or whatever. But it was nice to see Adam Sandler in not a crappy comedy, first of all. And that whole movie was so stressful. Just every moment.
yeah. And I mean that's why it was kind of a different experience in terms of being so stressed all the time. But I think that it didn't really go beyond that. And that's probably why it wasn't nominated because it was kind of one dimensional in the sense that you're just constantly worrying if this guy's going to get like shot or something, right? Whereas you look at the other movies on this list, Joker is like a masterpiece. 1917 is a visual masterpiece. Marriage Story, there's a lot of character arc there. I can see the appeal in that,
Acting is
even
amazing.
though, yeah. Um, Whereas I think you're just constantly tense watching Uncut Gems that I can see how it wouldn't be appealing. Like my
It's not for
parents didn't
everybody.
like it. My parents didn't like it, whereas I can see that Parasite is a movie that everyone can get on board because, like you said, it transcends a lot of genres. So there's always going to be some portion where I think someone can either get a laugh or get into it.
Yeah, and it's like I think Ford versus Ferrari is kind of the same, where it's like you're gonna like Ford versus Ferrari. It's like you can't
Right.
really go wrong with it. I mean, like so when I showed my parents Once Upon a Time in Hollywood the first night, they didn't like it, but then I showed them Ford versus Ferrari, and it's like you kind of have to like it's just a good movie. It doesn't. The only thing I could say is that like you think that Oscars for Best Picture, like the movie should be like pushing boundaries in some sort or like making you feel some different way, but whatever happened. I thought Knives Out was another movie that could have been nominated. I
Definitely.
loved Knives Out. It was like Murder on the Orient Express, but 30,000 times better because that was a piece of crap. But just so well done. Daniel Craig was awesome in it. All the acting, a lot of big names in it, and they all worked well. It was funny. It was clever. It was just.
My only criticism of that movie is that like I feel like we got the twist a little too
early.
early.
Yeah, they kind of gave it away.
Right. And it's just like, oh, so we really got to watch like another half an hour of you guys just putting the pieces together and solving the mystery. I just thought that was kind of the only, but doesn't take away from anything.
Yeah.
I still think it was great.
Like that's a fair point. You know, pretty much within like the first half an hour, you know who did it.
Yeah.
But which kind of gives the surprise away, but it also you're kind of able to develop the character who you find out it is because you kind of get to see her path, and like it kind of develops her character because she knows she did it and she's worried about it, and then it kind of flashes back and like the process of
so I'm not talking about that because I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
The way that she has to kind of like cover herself up the whole time. I think when they told us it was Chris Evans, I thought that was an easy cop out in my opinion. Like spoiler alert, I guess, but like it wasn't like after that one good plot twist where you see that it's her that is responsible for the guy dying. The Chris Evans one, I think they could have put a lot more effort into it and made it a better twist. Yeah, let's move on to the next category.
Yeah, you kind of always knew he was a bad guy.
Yeah.
But anyways, so actor in a leading role, obviously Joaquin Phoenix won it, and I think he deserved it.
Not even close.
Yeah, I think he was exceptional in it. It was the only movie where, and I keep saying it, where like obviously it's not an excuse, but I understood how somebody's life can go so low and just nothing works out for them to the point where they feel like empowered by killing people.
Yeah. I mean, there's not much more you can say about Joaquin's performance. It's one of the greatest in cinema history. Really, I guess there's not one person who is really against his role in this movie, I guess. I don't know. I think it's just kind of widely regarded as one of the best.
And there has to be something said about you being, again, it's kind of like The Revenant. You're the only one in the movie, and if you're not good in it, the movie relies on you being good. In Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or another movie, if a supporting actor or like one actor is kind of a little off, you're like, okay, but somebody else makes up for it. But when you're the only person, if you're not amazing, the movie is going to be crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the kind of path he took the Joker on. The laugh was very different, and I love how it was a condition rather than just him being kind of creepy. I love how that was, it was kind of part of what made him socially distanced from other people and led to like just the parts where he's on the subway and just like it's so tough to watch when he's not trying to laugh at the girl getting harassed, but it leads to him getting the crap beaten out of him because he just can't stop doing it. Or when he's on stage and he can't stop laughing, like it just makes your insides shrivel up.
And that's why I give a lot of credit for the writers and everyone who developed the story of this movie, because obviously it's not easy to portray that role as an actor, but to even take a spin on such a historic character like that, where you don't know how people are going to take it. And just kind of, we've never seen really a villain where you're not really rooting for him, but you're rooting for him
You
because
don't want him to go down.
right. Yeah, not much more to be
And
said about
the
it.
thing that was a bit different from the Heath Ledger's perception of it, um, is that I feel like Heath Ledger, and also about the actual acting part and being in the mindset of his Joker compared to Heath Ledger's, is that I feel like Heath Ledger can have a little more fun with it because it's Dark Knight is more of an action movie than Joker's. Because Joker's more of just like it's more of just about this character's growth and how he turns into like this deranged person. While I think Heath Ledger's able to have a little more fun with it because in his scenes he's a little more flashy. He's more of a jokester. He's he's able to be a little more flamboyant than Joaquin Phoenix character, who is a lot more dim and like a lot more, I'd say, just dark and just trouble, because the Dark Knight Joker is just in your face, just crazy. You know what I mean? It's different.
Yeah.
But like we said, he should have won. I thought some other people that should have. I thought if it wasn't going to be Joaquin Phoenix, I thought it was going to be Adam Driver in Marriage Story, or Leo in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I loved Adam Driver in Marriage Story. Although the movie itself, I wasn't a massive fan of it. His acting, you had to appreciate it.
That's what's so hard. Like, you try to separate the movie from the actor, but it's so hard to
really
invest yourself in a character's performance when you don't actually like the outcome of the film.
But it's interesting because it was one of those movies where it's like, while I was watching, I'm like, okay, this is good, this is good, this is okay. And then once the movie's over, you're like, that was actually better than like how you thought it was during the movie. Maybe, I don't know why it's like that, but sometimes you watch the movie and you're not liking as much, but then when it's done, maybe it's because the way it ended you really liked. But I liked the way it ended because it was just realistic. Like, it was a realistic depiction of a marriage going down. And a couple other actors that I thought could have realistically really given Joaquin a run for his money was Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson in The Lighthouse. They worked off each other perfectly. The problem is they're kind of two lead roles, so
Yeah.
it'd be tough to choose either. But they're just so deranged and crazy in it. And it's another one where Willem Dafoe kind of stays the same with it throughout the whole movie, but the way he's able to change Robert Pattinson and how their mindset changed and they kind of start going crazy. And I love seeing it. And it made me really excited to see Robert Pattinson in the new Batman. I think he's going to do a really good job.
Yeah.
But okay, we'll go to supporting role. So Brad Pitt won that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Brad Pitt, obviously. I mean, you look at the other ones, Joe Pesci, Al Pacino. I wasn't the biggest fan of The Irishman. I thought that like that story. What's the dude's name?
Frank Shearer or whatever his name was?
No,
Whoa.
the main guy. The biggest name in the movie. I forget what it is. Not the actor.
Not the actor?
The character's name, whatever.
Like who plays him though?
I'm pretty sure it's hold up.
Like, you're talking about Al Pacino?
Yeah, what's his character's name? Frank? No.
That's Robert De Niro's character.
Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah, Jimmy Hoffa.
So the Jimmy Hoffa story has been told so many times.
Has it?
Yes, and it's just like I've seen other ones before. I didn't think this one was any drastically different. I thought at this point in Scorsese's career, he's already made so many good movies that, much like Tarantino, as we see some of these guys get to the later end stages of their career, they're kind of just making films that they want to make. And I think that for Scorsese to get all of his friends back together and make a movie like this, that was a lot of the reason as to why he made it, not because he wanted to tell the story. For what are we talking about? We're talking about supporting role.
Actor in a supporting role.
Brad Pitt, solid pick. Just because I think it's so different, and he could easily have been a lead role in this movie. Realistically, like I think the parts are pretty split 50-50, and a lot of the more interesting scenes are driven by Brad Pitt.
Yeah, and I had my bets on him winning it as well, and that had to do. I didn't see A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, so I don't know how good Tom Hanks was in it, and I didn't see Two Popes, but I just didn't think it was a very strong. Like I thought Joe Pesci and Al Pacino were good in The Irishman, and I liked The Irishman. I didn't know anything about the story going into it, so that probably made it a lot more fresh for me. But I didn't think in general the actor in supporting role this for 2020 wasn't very strong this year anyways, so I have no problem with Brad Pitt getting it because I thought he did a good job. But we'll move on to actress in a leading role. I didn't see Judy because Renee Zellweger won it, but I heard she was amazing in the movie. It was amazing. So I heard she totally deserved it, and I'm fine with that. Because I was going to say Scarlett Johansson in Marriage Story, but that's just because I've seen it, and it's the only movie on this list that I saw, and she was great in it. But I'm fine with Renee Zellweger getting it.
So I've seen Marriage Story, and I've seen Bombshell as well. Charlize Theron was very good, but in comparison to these other actresses I can see here, I heard a lot of good things about Harriet. I didn't see it. So Cynthia Erivo definitely could have competed, but
yeah, how was Bombshell? I didn't see it. My dad saw it.
Bombshell was really good. Yeah, I wasn't really crazy about it, but it's a good movie.
Okay, and then we'll go to actress in a supporting role because I guess we kind of went back and forth here, but we'll go to actress in supporting role. Laura Dern won it. I thought she was really good in Marriage Story. Kind of almost like the villain to Adam Driver in it, which is kind of funny. But no, I thought she was really good in it. Like you kind of, I think it depends like kind of who you are watching it, who you're gonna side with in the movie, because it's definitely like you're definitely siding with one of the parents. You're siding with Adam
divisive
Driver
movie
or Scarlett Johansson, and you might hate Laura Dern because like, oh, she's trying to screw over. I'm like saying bad things about Adam Driver. So I thought it was really interesting because you either really like her or you really hate her. And so I think if a person's thinking about that, thinking that about you, then you've obviously done a good job.
Yeah. Laura Dern was pretty good in the movie. Like you said, if you're siding with the one character, then obviously you're going to like her a lot more. And I'm guessing that's the case.
So a couple key categories here left before we wrap up. Cinematography. Were you happy with 1917?
100%. I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood cinematography, but Roger Deakins is just a dirty dog when it comes to cinematography. Blade Runner, just countless other films that have relied so much on visual aesthetic, and I think he executes it better than anyone in the business. But yeah, just like the feel of the film, you can, like, obviously everyone knows if you've seen 1917, it seems like it's all one shot. And one big part of cinematography for a movie like that is to keep consistent with the mood and the lighting of everything. And I think he did that very well. One of my favorite scenes is when he wakes up from getting like the bullet to the helmet, and then he's running outside and there's like bombs exploding and there's a lot of shadows and stuff. Just like you could tell there was so much work put into this film in every aspect, and I think it paid off tremendously. Joker, I wouldn't really put it up there against 1917 or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think The Lighthouse, you can easily say that it works because it's black and white the whole time. It is shot very well. I just think 1917 is a step above.
Yeah, for me, it was going to be either I would be pleased with The Lighthouse or 1917 winning. The thing I liked about the one shot is, although it's cool that it's in one shot, is I found myself, which I loved, is like just looking in the background and seeing that there's so many different things going in the background to make it feel realistic. And the shots are going on for so long that the coordination and choreography for that, like if one person messes up, it must just be like it must be so frustrating. So it must be such a tough way to film, but it made it a lot more realistic because there's so many, you feel like you're walking along with them in a lot of those scenes. And also, like you said, when he's running and all the bombs are going on, there's just so many things going on behind them that it adds so much more to the story that like there was no need to cut to different scenes. They did it the way you're following them on their journey, and it was only within a certain amount of time, so there really was no need to cut back. Like they weren't really cutting back to other characters because the main plot was about them. So I thought it was really effective, and also just one shots are cool. But yeah, sorry, continue.
No, I was just gonna say, and one thing, like you were talking about the choreography, if anything goes wrong, one scene, like the final kind of sprint where he's running down the battlefield and he's running like horizontally when everyone's going ahead. He runs into someone in the actual scene and he falls over, and that was not planned. So the fact that they were able to just go along with that, especially because like you think the amount of work it takes to like choreograph everyone lining up and then the bombs and everything going off, you want to just take the best take you have and run with it, and they didn't stop.
Yeah, and like that's what I'm saying, the smallest thing, because I'm sure directors are pretty particular, like they want the scene to be pretty much perfect. And especially with Sam Mendes, who directed this, amazing director, he hasn't done that many movies, so when you're putting out a movie, it needs to be good. And I mean, every movie he's done so far pretty much I love. I think American Beauty, we definitely need to do that when we get to 1999. It's one of the top 5 movies I've ever seen in my life. But anyways, like even if the smallest thing happens, like in the background, and he's like, oh, that's going to piss me off if I see that go to screen. And that just, there's so much more on the line when you're shooting in one shot. But yeah, with the lighthouse, I think the black and white was used really effectively because it really set the mood. And it was, did you watch it? It's in like a really small like aspect ratio, like it's very narrow. So you kind of like feel like you're stuck in this house with these two characters. And it's just, the cinematography is very odd and weird. And like even the final scene is one of the weirdest final scenes I've ever seen in a movie. So I thought it was really different. And I think it worked really well with how kind of trippy and weird of a movie it is. Cause it's just, it kind of like works with the mindset of in the mood.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a good candidate.
I've never seen anything like it. But and then the last one we're gonna do is music, just because I think music drives, like, if sometimes music just makes the whole movie. I mean, if a movie is good but it doesn't have a good soundtrack, it's just like it drives the emotion, it drives the story, just everything about it. A good score can drive a movie, and I thought Joker by far had the best.
Yeah.
Score. I loved the score.
Another one that could probably go on was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but that's more of just like good music selection from Tarantino, which he always has. But
it's also like a period. It just like worked with the period and everything like that.
Yeah, but there's a lot of aspects of Joker that make it such a good film, and that's definitely.
And I mean, it's just like pretty much Joker is the definition of music driving story, because it's one of the only movies where while they were acting, usually they act and then they'll put the score in after. It's one of the only movies where while they were acting, the score was actually playing in the background so they could hear it, and Joaquin could react to it while it was going on. So he could like react to the emotions of it. And I mean, that the music is just like, it's just draining your soul and just like so eerie, and it worked perfectly. I loved it.
Yeah, it's one of my top picks for film of the year. We should do a list of our films of the year at some point.
Definitely we will. I guess we'll post that to the Instagram or whatever, do a video about it, whatever. But that about wraps it up. We've done a good amount of time here just babbling about movies. But so I think we've decided that our next our next movie that we'll be reviewing, so you guys can go out and watch it. I don't think it's on Netflix, but you can get it online. I mean, I got it pretty easily online, is Black Klansman.
Amazon
So
Prime, I think it's on as
that
well.
has it too. But yeah, you can even just look up free online movie, and I'm sure you'll find it because I did. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Watch it, and then the review will be better because we won't be spoiling anything for you guys. But yeah, that wraps it about up.
I liked it. I like doing this. This is very different, but it gives us some more personality, I guess.
Definitely. Well, that'll do it. Thank you for tuning in, and watch the movie so you guys can come along for the ride. See ya.